All right, it's 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us day after the Super Bowl. So hopefully you're all feeling okay. Before we get started, I've got a few housekeeping procedures like normal to go over. Uh, if everyone can please remain on mute during the presentation so there isn't any background noise, that would be much appreciated. There's one button on your screens I'd like you all to avoid hitting. It says present now. Please do not click that as that will interrupt Mr. Lewis's presentation. If you have any technical issues, please put those into the chat feature and I'll do my best to help you through those. Just be aware that a lot of the times the technical issues stem from your own Wi-Fi connection. If you have any questions during the presentation, please put those into the chat as well, and I will prompt Clark as needed. If anyone has dialed in today via telephone, please send me an email at mfey@pgahq.com. That way we'll make sure you get your MSR credits for this morning. And this is being recorded, so this will be up on our YouTube channel this week, should you ever need to refer back to it or share with any of your colleagues. With that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Clark Lewis, and I believe Clark is going to start us off with a little number here.
Yes, I am, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And as is our custom, we'll start off with the patriotic song. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming? And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Are you there, Matt?
Yeah, it's your show now. You can take it away.
Okay. Good, okay. I got a little emotional there for a moment. Well, since I have my screen up here now, am I on camera?
You are, yes, sir.
Oh, good. Okay, I just have to be careful if I scratch my nose or something. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining, especially on a day after you may have partied possibly a little too hearty. I know we had lots of fun here. We had a little house party yesterday, and I certainly was feeling the effects of demon rum this morning. I also would like to take this time to thank Alice Miller for picking up the torch that I laid down and becoming chairman of our rules committee. I know she's just a wonderful teacher and she knows the rules, a great person. I want to thank her for doing this for me and for us. And of course, all the other people. We have Mr. Karpus, of course, and Jeff Kitty, and then Mark Monahan, Ben Debsky, and Andy Waters. And I understand there's a lot of good grades coming out of those guys. So they have a great future ahead of them with the rules, hopefully on our national committee. Okay, we're going to talk today about rule number 6 and rule number 7. And mercifully, these rules probably won't, I can probably go over these rules in less than 2 hours. So, but we'll, give you a little bit of more time to recover. I hope your team, I hope you're happy with the result from yesterday. A couple of other things I should mention to you. If you have not already gotten on your telephone, or computer, the USGA app, the rules app, this is the time to do it. It only takes, you can do it in about a minute. And it's a tremendous tool for you to use in looking up the rules. I hardly have to look at the large book anymore. It's right there on the telephone. It's fantastic and so easy. In fact, it's so good that when we take the exam, you'll hear me talking a lot about the exam. When we take the rigorous rules exam, we're not allowed to use it. It's that good. So we have to use our own minds, the first 50 questions, and we have to use then we use we use some printed material afterwards. Okay, so the other thing I should tell you is, if you really are interested in getting yourself deeply immersed in the rules, and you really want to go over it, pull up on your computers a thing called the Roving Official. The Roving Official. It's a program. If you take it right from the beginning, it takes a few days to do it. And I will have to say that was one of the greatest. It's Lou Blakey, formerly with the USGA, a real savant when it comes to the rules, and he put that thing together. And the way it's done, if you're really interested in the rules, it reinforces it like nothing else. Okay, so let's get started. Here we are with Rule 6, playing a hole. Here we are. And one other thing, no matter whether you're taking this course just for points or whether you just truly love the rules, it would be good as professionals for you to learn the rules by number. Now you don't have to know the 6.1 with the slashes and the decimal points, but to learn them by number. And the best way that I found, one of my compatriots on the rules committee said, you think of your golf course and you assign a rule to each hole on the golf course. Of course, you go up to 18, and then you just have to work 19 through the other rules, the other 24 rules. But at least you get that first 18. So when you're thinking about a rule, you want to know the number, you think of that hole on your golf course, and it really helps you. You can work on it. Probably take you about an hour, and you'll have them by the numbers. Okay, we're going to talk. The purpose here, we're going to talk about starting play of a hole, playing the ball from the teeing area. That's where you got to start. And now we have a definition of tee. For the longest time, we did not have any definition of tee, and now we have it. That's TEE. And now we talk also about the order of play. And we have the definition honor. We use the European spelling of that, which I kind of like better. And then how do you complete the play of a hole? Okay. Now we need to know when a hole is started and completed. It seems simple. You start play, you take a swing, but it does get a little more complicated than that. And there's special rules that apply when a ball is played from the teeing area of the hole being played. And the order in which players must play throughout a hole. It's important, more important probably in match play, as you'll see. And there we have, Rule 6 covers how to play a hole. There's a guy here, very nice looking backswing, right on plane. And he's going to start. And there's the ball in that hole, that marvelous sound when that ball goes in the hole. There could be nothing more enjoyable than hearing that. Now you got some specific rules for teeing off to start a hole. They want you to use the same ball, except, well, we have to allow for the fact that a ball can become damaged. And some of these rules have changed over the last since the rule change in 2019, and for the better. The order of play, and as I said, it can matter more in match play than stroke play. And then, as we said before, completing the hole. Okay. Now, here's our question. Let's read that question. And if you think, when you go through this, if you think this is, cut and dried, think again. In match play, a player has started play of a hole, even if his first stroke played from outside the teeing area is canceled by his opponent. In stroke play, a player has started play of a hole, even if he has played from outside the teeing area. See, when a player returns to the teeing area under stroke and distance, if he drops the ball in the teeing area, it is in play. But if he tees or places his ball in the teeing area, it is not in play until he makes a stroke at it. And D, when a ball is in the teeing area, it can be moved anywhere else in the teeing area without penalty, even in the unusual case when the ball is in play. Okay, so let's think about that. We're going to come back to that after we have soaked up all the knowledge that I'm going to throw at you right now, starting now. Now, when does a hole start? The player has started a hole when he or she makes a stroke to begin the hole. And you'll see later on whether or not you make contact with the ball. But if you have the intention of hitting it, that's a stroke. Now, the hole has started. Here's a player obviously gonna make a mistake, even if the stroke comes from outside the teeing area. Okay, this young lady is going to make a mistake. There's a lot of things that can happen here now. Or the stroke was canceled under a rule, and that can happen. Now, and this is a heck of a hole if you have a slice, I would say. This is going to be a tough one. You have to aim pretty far left. Now, the ball must be played from inside the teeing area, and we'll talk about what that is. But you see that imaginary rectangle there where the player is starting play of the hole. You got to start each hole by playing a ball from anywhere inside the teeing area under this rule, under 6-2. Now, some of this stuff that we'll talk about here now will be reiterated and gone over a number of times to fortify this knowledge. This is what the USGA believes in when they make these presentations. And some of the stuff you know anyway at your level right now. But we'll go over them anyway. So here's the teeing area. That's the area that player's got to play from when he or she is playing the hole. And there it is. A little closer view of it. Okay. Now, what is it? It's a rectangle. We know what a rectangle is. It's 2 club lengths deep. Okay, you can see the club on the ground. 2 club lengths. Now, we talk about club lengths, and what exactly do we mean by that? Hey, there it is. Okay, and there's a definition to it. That's the length, and this goes throughout the rules. The length of the longest club of the 14, and you don't have to start with 14. Don't start with more than 14, but you can start with 10 if you wish. And they can be 10 8-irons. Nobody's telling you what to take out there as long as they conform. So the player, the 14 clubs a player has during the round, other than a putter. Okay, and that's the longest club, and that's going to be used. Rule 14 will tell you how to all those measuring things. That's how you do it. So long, even if you used a 7-iron to do the measurement, it'll refer back to the putter. I should say to your longest club in the bag, which is probably a driver. other than the putter. Forgive me. Now, how do you do this? The front edge is defined by the line between the forwardmost points of the two tee markers set by the committee. Set by the committee. When we do these tournaments, any of our tournaments, whether they be at a national level, PGA, I've done a few PGAs. This year I'm going to be doing the PGA Seniors, and I will also be doing the PGA Boys Junior as a rules official. And we treat them all exactly alike, whether it be the PGA Championship or the Junior Championship. They go out with a T-square, the people who are doing the setup, to make sure that tee is not only set up correctly, but it points to the drive zone. It's defined by the line between the forwardmost points, and the side edges are defined by the lines back from that. By the way, when you are preparing for a tournament, especially if you have an old golf course like mine, I'm on a golf course that's way over 100 years old, and the tees are small, and sometimes my grounds crew will make a mistake by putting by not giving the player the two club lengths. They'll put the tee too far back on the teeing area. So before tournaments, things like that, make sure that doesn't happen, because you don't want the player standing with his foot to right or left, depending on left or right, in the rough. The side edges are lines back. Okay. Now that's one of the 5 defined areas of the course, and that would be something you need to commit to memory quickly. What are the 5 areas of the course? There were 4 before 2019, and they extricated the bunker from what we used to call water hazards, and that's now one of the 5 parts of the golf course. Okay. Now, all other teeing locations on the course, whether you see these are on the same hole, they're part of the general area. Part of the general area. Now, obviously, a ball must be played from inside this area. Now, if a player plays from outside the teeing area, we're going to talk about the difference between what happens in match play and stroke play, and there's a great difference. All right, and including from a wrong set of tee markers on the same hole. You have to be playing from if you're playing those blue tees right there, that's where you got to go. If you play from the white tees, you have played from outside the teeing area or a different hole. Okay. Now in match play, this player is really trying to get some advantage. He's getting about a yard advantage here. In match play, there's no penalty. Remember that, no penalty for doing this. However, the opponent, your opponent, when you hear opponent, that means match play, may cancel the stroke. He may. He's got control here. And this must be done promptly and before either player makes another stroke. Later on, we're going to talk about what happens in a 4-ball. If the opposition wants to cancel a stroke, when can that be done? Player A, player B. We'll talk about that. And when the opponent cancels the stroke, the opponent cannot withdraw that. Can't, it's not hey, I was only kidding. No. So if the opponent does cancel the stroke, the player has got to come back inside the teeing area, drop back there, and tee off correctly in the teeing area. And it's still his or her turn to play. That sentence there I like to approach these webinars with the exam, the rigor, as I said before, the rigorous exam that you might wish to take about the rules. And These are what I call exam wreckers. Is it still his or her turn to play? You'll get a question like that quite often. Okay. The stroke counts. The ball is in play. Now, if the opponent doesn't cancel the stroke, then the stroke counts. Ball is in play and must be played as it lies. So this player in match play has teed off from outside the teeing area, but the opponent doesn't cancel it. Maybe he's hit it into a dreadful place. The opponent's not going to cancel that. And the ball must be played as it. You just got to keep on playing. It wouldn't matter how far in front he did this. You just keep on playing, he or she. Okay. In stroke play, altogether different. Player gets the general penalty, which we know is 2 strokes. When we talk of a general penalty, whether it be in match play or stroke play, it means a penalty of 2 strokes. And you got to correct it. You got to go back and correct this. And how long do you have to correct it? The ball must be played from outside. The ball played from outside the teeing area is not in play. Remember that. That is not a ball in play. When we talk about the status of a golf ball later on, we'll in another webinar, we'll be talking about when a ball is in play. If you play from outside the teeing area, that ball is not in play. Now, you got to correct it. And that the stroke or any more strokes before the mistake is corrected do not count. So let's say this young lady tees off here and in stroke, it makes an 11. She pulls the ball out of the hole and someone says, as you see, you'll see in a minute when when you have to, how much time you have to correct it, said, hey, played from outside the teeing ground. You're going to have to go back and correct. Well, there's a 2-stroke penalty attached to that. But she's got that 11, she thinks. Well, now she goes back to the tee and makes a 3. Well, she's got a 5. How long do you have to do it? You got to correct it. And if the player does not correct this mistake before making a stroke to begin another hole, or you'll see another little thing slide in here, or for the final hole of the round, before returning the scorecard. They cleaned that up. That's much cleaner now since 2019 on that final hole situation. If that happens, a trunk slammer. We know what a trunk slammer is. You're disqualified. DSQ. Out of there. Now, are there any questions on Rule 6.1? Starting play of a hole.
There haven't been any submitted yet.
Okay. Hey, Matt, I have a thing on my screen here right next to stop sharing that says hide. Can I hit that?
Yes, you can hit hide.
All right, because I'm going to be careful here. It was blocking something. All right, because I'm just as likely to hit the wrong thing here with the way my eyes are. Okay, good. I did it right. All right, here we go on again. We'll go to 6.2. Okay. Now, there's special teeing area rules. One of the 5 parts of the golf course. They have teeing area rules. Now, when a ball is in the teeing area, the ball may be teed or played from the ground. And we're going to talk about, as we said before, that's what this repetition comes. Definition of tee. And then we're going to talk about certain conditions in the teeing area which may be improved. And I'm going to tell you a little story about going way back when I was an assistant playing in a tournament. I had a little problem on the teeing area. Amazing. And restriction on moving the tee. Can you move the teeing areas when you're playing? You just go up there and move them around if you feel like it. The ball's not in play until a stroke is made. And when a ball in play lies in the teeing area, you'll see how that works. We're going to get an aerial view to help us with that. Okay, got the teeing area rules. They apply whenever a player is required or allowed to play a ball from the teeing area, and that'll be explained. But a lot of times you have to go back to where you hit the previous shot from to play under the rules, and a lot of times you are you have a choice. That's one of your options when you're penalized or when you're penalized. Okay. Now the player is starting play of a hole. This includes that. The player will play again from the teeing area under a rule. This is what we said. So he's got maybe he hit it out of bounds, got a stroke in distance, got to go back. Could be hit it into a penalty area. Now the player's ball in play in the teeing area after a stroke. Watch this one. Whoa. I don't know who that is, but to have that, looks like a very important player with the caddy and everything like that, to have that in our presentation, that is infamy personified. Okay, that player took a windy. All right. Now, as we said, could be that you've hit it into a penalty area, and you have to go back to the tee. Player's ball is in play after the player has taken relief, and that's one of the options. We all know that stroke and distance is always an option when we're taking relief. Now, it's the teeing area that the player must play from starting the hole, not any of these other ones. Larry Startzel had a rules interesting rules situation that he wrote up in the PGA magazine about a player who played from the incorrect tee, came back and played from another incorrect tee, and it was he had a lot of penalty strokes. So not any of the other these other teeing areas we know now are part of the general area. You'd be playing from a wrong place there, and there could be penalties for it could be a serious breach. Now, when the ball is in the teeing area, we're going to talk about that. The ball may be teed or played from the ground. Once again, definition of tee, all this reiteration. Certain conditions can be improved. You have a restriction on what you can do with the tee markers. It's not in play until the stroke is made. And when the ball in play lies or touches the teeing area, we're going to talk about all those things. Here it is. When is a ball in the teeing area? Well, when any part of it touches it or is above it. So it's going up to infinity. So there you have, well, you can see this is pretty self-explanatory, the ones that are outside the teeing area. But it's going to tell you something else here in a minute. That the player may stand outside the teeing area, like a lot of us do that, to get a better angle. If we know what we're doing, if we want to try to hook or fade to get a better angle in making a stroke at the ball in the teeing area, you can do that. Now, can be teed or played from the ground. Obviously, you got those little rubber things. Now, what is a tee? Simply, this is a new definition. Relatively new, an object used to raise a ball above the ground to play it from the teeing area. Can't be any longer than 4 inches, and it's got to conform. As you'll see a few of these tees that don't conform. So, as it says, can be played from either a tee placed in or on the ground, or the ground itself. Now you see that ball that's teed up on a clump of grass. I was doing the PGA Junior Championship many years ago in Ohio, and a Belgian young gentleman, I was on this tee where they could try to drive the green over this big tree. It was a par 4, try to drive it on the green. And this goes a while back before we had definitions like this. And he had done this, and he had put the tee in that irregularity of surface that he created. He was trying to get some height to try to get over this tree. And he asked me, well, I stopped him before he did this because I was a little unclear. And I said, what are you doing there? He said, in his best Belgian, and I don't have much Belgian, he was asking me whether this was okay. And I did not know. So I had to call our chairman at the time. And he told him to wait until he checked with a higher authority, and really hadn't been too many decisions about this. But the upshot of it was I told him, no, you better not do that. And we proceeded. Okay. Now the ground includes sand or other natural materials put in place to set the ball on. And you might be saying, sand? What are we talking sand here? Well, this harkens back to where golf started. There were no tees, no wooden tees. That's a relatively new invention. And you would take on the tee, the teeing ground, or the tee box as they used to call it, there was a pail with water and sand. And to raise the ball up off the ground, you would make a little pyramid like this, maybe not quite as wide as that one, to set the ball on, so you could more easily get the ball into the air. So it includes sand, and the USGA, they always want to include and pay tribute to the past as well as the future. And this is a legal thing to do now, what that young man wanted to do, something similar. Now, what do we got here? Here's a couple of things. You make a stroke with a ball on this thing, we'll see what the problem is. We'll see what you're going to be penalized. We'll see what the penalty is. You can't make a stroke. You don't want to make a stroke at a non-conforming tee. There's a tee with a little rocker back, and I guess that's so you don't put any spin on the ball. Now here's my friend John Daly. I'll tell you a little story about him in a minute. And let's see what happens. Got a Coke bottle down there. John put on a little weight since then, but yeah, he used to do that. Well, now I can't do it. Okay, going to be a little higher than 4 inches. Or player, you can't make a stroke at a non-conforming tee, or teed in a way not allowed. And that's not allowed. You can use the sand, that's okay, but not a Coke bottle. All right, now here's the penalty. Keep this in mind. You might say, well, if he did that, he's similar to making a swing with a non-conforming club. No, this is a kinder, gentler USGA, and you get a little break here. Your first breach of this rule is you get the 2-stroke penalty. Now, if you do it again, you're going to be disqualified. Okay. Now, in the teeing area, there's certain conditions that you can improve. And here we are. Before making a stroke, the player may take some actions to improve the conditions. And this goes back to Rule 8, where you talk about actions that improve conditions affecting the stroke. And covers these things. And you see what... Now, this is... what's the English girl's name here? Alice, who is that?
Laura Davies.
Laura Davies.
Very rarely used a tee.
Yeah, I don't know how I could forget that name. What a great player she was. So she likes to do that, no problem. You can alter the surface of the ground in the teeing area. You can move, bend, or break. Just be careful with this. Grass, weeds, and other natural objects that are attached or growing in the ground in the teeing area. Remember, soil in the teeing area. Now, this is new, relatively new. You can remove dew, frost, and water. As you can see, this player here, he's got a towel. He's getting rid of the frost or the dew. This looks like dew because he's short sleeves in the teeing area. Now, but once again, you're going to get the general penalty if you take an action that is in breach of 8.1. That's something that it's, you've gone too far. You've gone too far. Now, tee markers. What can you do with these tee markers? Here's a set of tee markers. Boy, this goes way back with those outfits. At least you know where you're going with those tee markers. And it's set by the committee. And it should remain in that same location for all players who will play from the teeing area. Now, if the player, say you get up there and, boy, that thing's in your way and you improve that, you could be subject to penalty. There's times when you are, times when you're not in the stroke. Okay? Now, if you move the tee marker before playing, he or she is going to get the general penalty for a breach. Get up there and you've teed the ball up. Maybe this thing's in your way. You kind of knock it out with your hand or your foot or something like that, going to get penalized. In all other situations, the tee markers are treated as regular movable obstructions that may be removed. Now, that would mean that, let's say you hit your tee shot, hit a tree, came back, and now these things are considered to be, because the ball's in play, they're only set there before you tee off, so you can move them. Now, ball's not in play until the stroke is made, whether the ball is teed or on the ground when starting play of a hole. Remember this one. Whether the ball is teed or on the ground when starting play of a hole, or playing again from the teeing area if you have to go back. And then at that point, the ball is not in play until the player makes a stroke at it. Now, you can lift or move without penalty before the stroke is made. Well, we know what this is. Ball falling off the tee. All right, player tees up. Ooh.
Whoops.
And
been there, yeah. Start the process over.
I would plead with you not to be the guy who says, or guy or girl who says, that's one. Nobody will like you. Okay? You can re-tee it. But if the player makes a stroke at that ball while it's falling off or has fallen off, there's no penalty. Stroke counts and the ball is in play. Now, when this thing is in the teeing area, when the ball is in the teeing area, after a stroke, as we said before, maybe you whiffed it, like that fellow did, such as teed off after and missed the ball, or taken reef, or maybe the ball hits a tree, comes back, but the ball is now in the teeing area. The player may lift or move the ball without penalty. This is a much better rule. This is a change for the good. Because you couldn't do that other than on the teeing area without being penalized. Now you can play that ball or substitute from anywhere in the teeing area, from a tee on the ground, or you can play it as it lies. Now, this is important. It's new and it's a help. Tells you that you're back in the teeing area. You can play the ball as it lies. You may move the ball, even though it's in play. Obviously, it's in play. You can move the ball to another spot. You can do anything that you could do before you teed off. or adjust the height. They had a dreadful rule about players who whiffed, and then this goes back, and then decided to raise the height of the tee. It was a myriad of penalties, a plethora of penalties for doing that, and they cleaned this all up. It's great. Okay. Now the penalty from playing in the wrong place, general penalty. Now here's our question again. Which of the following is false? And of course we know now. In match play, a player has started play of a hole, even if his first stroke played from outside the teeing area is canceled by his opponent. Do we think that's false or true? B, in stroke play, a player has started play of a hole, even if he has played from outside the teeing area. Has he started play? C, when a player returns to the teeing area under stroke and distance, if he drops the ball in the teeing area, it's in play. But if he tees or places his ball in the teeing area, it's not in play until he makes a stroke at it. Got that one? He dropped it. He didn't tee it up. D, when a ball is in the teeing area, it can be moved anywhere else in the teeing area without penalty, even in the unusual case when it is in play. Well, what do you think? And the answer is C. That is the false statement. You can drop that ball. Even if you drop it, you can now move it around, do what you want, as we learned before. Any questions on that 6.2?
None have been submitted yet, Clark.
Okay. Everybody awake out there after the Super Bowl? Okay. We plod onward. Ball used to play a hole. Now this is, once again, I spoke of the status of the ball, and we'll be getting there. I think we're going to be. Alice, are we doing anything on status of the ball in the upcoming webinars?
You know, Clarky, we were not going to, it's a separate presentation that covers
Okay.
6.3 and 14.4. And it's pretty lengthy, and I wasn't going to have any of us teach it, but I do think we can discuss it and condense it down, because in my opinion, understanding the status is just critical to applying the rules. And so maybe kicking off my presentation next week, I might talk about that a little bit. But the key thing is the ball can only have two statuses, really. It's either going to be in play or it's not. And the thing that gets confusing is when somebody substitutes a ball when they're not allowed to, it doesn't mean that's the wrong ball. It just means that's now the ball in play. And if they make a stroke at it, they're going to get a penalty. So we will discuss that. I don't think I'll do the full presentation, but I will talk about that next week.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on. All right, we have the order of play. The honor. Here's a question. Player A and then player B play their balls from the teeing area into a pond marked as a red penalty area. A's ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area 20 yards nearer the hole than where B's ball crossed. A's ball sank in the middle of the pond about 30 yards from the hole. B's ball sank near the green side edge about 10 yards from the hole. So it looks like A's ball is farther from the hole. Neither ball in the pond is found or retrieved. Which player's turn is it to play? I had one of these. I was a rules official in the PGA Cup, and we had an Irish player playing against one of our players, and this situation occurred. And I was lucky that I had gone over this so that I could tell who was going to have the honor, because it was extremely important in this. It was really hotly contested. So here's the thing. It's A's turn to play since his ball in the pond is farther from the hole than B's. It's B's turn to play since his ball entered the penalty area farther from the hole than A's. Entered it, but then ended up getting closer. The order of play is determined by where the two players make their next strokes after taking relief. So a player could take relief. Maybe it's a red penalty area. Could take the 2 club lengths, or a player has other options and could go all over the place. And then who would be away? And then D, since A played first from the teeing area on his previous stroke, it's A's turn to play. So keep those in mind. Well, we will now talk about these and see. Now, here we have, I think this is old Tom Morris. He's got, look at that grip. Not a Varden grip by any means. He's got his hands working a little against one another, but he became a great player. And who else do we have there? I think that's a picture of that little fella there is Tom Smith. He got an early start. My good friend Tom. Okay. Now this covers the order of play throughout the hole. Now, and the teeing area. From the teeing area, it depends on who has the honor. And after that, it's based on which ball is farthest from the hole. We know that. That's simple stuff. In match play, this is a very fundamental idea. If a player plays out of turn, the opponent may cancel a stroke and make the player play again. So the player plays out of turn, makes a hole in 1. But it was his turn to play. So this, his opponent decides he's going to recall that stroke. And then, of course, when he gets back in the clubhouse and everybody knows about it, he now has to withdraw his membership from the club. But anyway, would have that right to do it. If his opponent hit it out of bounds, he certainly wouldn't recall the stroke. Okay, there's no penalty for playing out of turn in stroke play. And players are both allowed and encouraged to play. And this is the new thing, play ready golf. And you'll see, even in match play, we're encouraging to play ready golf. Keep things moving. And it's saying to play out of turn in a safe and responsible way. You don't want to hit each other. You don't want to have any injuries. Under match play, we've got the order of play. And as we said, the opponent may cancel the player's stroke made out of turn. And obviously, you're going to play in the order when you start the first hole and starting all other holes. We'll see how that works. And then after both players start a hole. So here we have a bracket. So we go to the first hole to start our match, and it's decided by the draw set by the committee. So that's how we're going to operate. Looks like Mr. Doyle has the honors there. And if there is no draw, you can do it. You're going to flip a coin. We call it a random method. Now, these are things we know pretty well, but we need to talk about them. Starting on the other holes, the player who wins a hole has the honor at the next teeing area. And if the hole was tied with the honor at the previous teeing area, he keeps it. We know these. Now, what about a ruling? If you make a timely ruling request, so things are still up in the air, haven't been decided yet, it could affect who has the honor on the next hole. And some of the matches, some of the gap matches that I hear about and I get calls about occasionally, pretty hotly contested. They want to know, the honor is decided by agreement, once again by tossing a coin. Agreement. That'd be good. Now, after you start play of a hole, ball that's farther from the hole is to be played first, as it says. Now, if they're the same distance, and that gets to be a little hard anymore because you have the yardage indicators. You have the various you have the GPS things and all that. But if it is the same distance, random method again. Okay. Now, if the distances aren't known, same thing at that time. Now here you'll see this little slide here quite often. In match play, the opponent can cancel the player's stroke. Now she's going to make this. She's ready to hit this thing, and she's not away. It's not her turn to play. There's no penalty, but the opponent may cancel the stroke. And it has to be done promptly and before either player makes another stroke. Now, she can't withdraw it. We talked about that. Cancel the stroke, can't withdraw that cancellation. Now, if the opponent cancels the stroke, the player, when it's his or her turn to play correctly, got to play a ball from where that stroke was made. And here's the teeing area. There's the general area situation, bunker or penalty area, and the putting green. Now, if the opponent doesn't cancel the stroke counts. Ball's in play, must be simple. Ball, no big deal there. Now, you don't see this too much, but there's an exception. If you play out a turn by agreement to save time, I'm sorry, I was thinking of another thing which will come up in a minute. But now we're talking about an exception, playing out of turn by agreement to save time. If you save time, you can invite the opponent to play, or you may agree that the opponent's request to play out of turn. It's okay to do that. Maybe a player has to use the facility. Would you mind go ahead and play? And if the player agrees, but the player does not have to agree. Now, if the opponent makes the stroke out of turn, you've given up your right to cancel it, obviously, because you agreed to play out of turn. Match play. Okay. See rule 20. Now, I alluded to this before. 23.6, I was going to tell you how to do it in a 4-ball. Player A tees off out of turn. And then player B plays out of turn. And who can be asked to replay the stroke? Check it out. Check 23.6. It's interesting. And it's an exam record too. Now, in stroke play, we got the normal order of play. Playing out of turn, safe and responsible. Go ready golf. That's good. Same thing. Starting on the first hole, starting on all other holes after both players start a hole. And the honor here is decided by the draw, by the committee. So it looks like at 12 o'clock, Francis Castillo of Paterson, New Jersey, is set to play first. If there's no draw by agreement, use a random method. Now, once again, this may be something. This can be an exam record too. The player in the group with the lowest gross score has the honor. Then the second lowest gross score. Okay, players have the same gross score at a hole. Play in the same order as before. It's based on gross scores, an exam record. You'll get it and say, what is it? You're scratching your head, but there it is. It has to do gross. Gross. Now, after all players have started a hole, the ball that's farthest, once again, we did this before. 2 or more, if they're the same distance or same relative distances aren't known, the ball will be played first, decided by agreement or the random method, flipping of the coin. Once again, here's that slide again. This player is playing out of turn. There's no penalty in stroke play. And this is what I made a mistake about before, except that if 2 or more players agree to play out of turn to give one of them an advantage. Used to be a DSQ for both of them. Now It's the general penalty. You know, she's saying the player might say, look, I'm playing so bad. Doesn't matter what I do here. I'll come up and hit a shot. It might help you. And then the other player says, okay, agrees to it. That's an agreement that you can't do. You get a 2-stroke penalty there. You don't see that too often. Now we're going to talk a little bit about ready golf. And they're encouraged to do it, to speed things up. And once again, a safe and responsible way. You do it for convenience or to save time. Or, you know, you knock it up there and maybe she's chipped this up because probably that ball would have been marked otherwise. And so she's chipped it up and, hey, may I go and finish? Very short distance? Sure. You can do that. Now, if the other player is ready to play and the other player is contemplating the shot, perhaps, let's see what happens. So long as there's no danger, distraction, or interference.
The order of play when starting a hole depends on who has the honor. After that, it is based on which ball is farthest from the hole. In stroke play, however, there is no penalty for playing out of turn, and the 2019 rules both allow and encourage you to play ready golf, which means to play in the safe and responsible order that is most convenient and that saves time. These players agreed to play out of turn because the player farther from the hole had a difficult shot, and the other player was ready to play.
Okay. So as long as you don't distract, endanger, or interfere. Ready golf is a good thing. And actually, I'll occasionally, when I'm out doing as a rules official, whether it be regardless of I'm probably not going to say it at the PGA Senior Championship, but I will say it at possibly at the Boys Junior. Maybe you should. I'm not going to suggest that players play out of turn, you know, in a high level like that. But I certainly will do it at the junior. How about a little ready golf till you get back on track, so he won't have to time you. Now, if a player whose turn it is to play is ready and indicates he wants to play first, the other player should generally wait until that player has played. Shouldn't play out of turn to get an advantage over other players. Now, what do you do when a player has to play a provisional ball or another ball from the teeing area? Now, in this case, all other players in the group have to make their first stroke on the hole before the player plays the provisional ball or another ball from the teeing area. We know this, but you don't just whip that ball out and put it down there again because you're playing out of turn. If more than one player is going to play a provisional ball, say from the teeing area, well, then the order of play is the same order as before. You're going to have 2 provisional balls. Okay, and it'll tell you about other balls out of turn. 6-4 tells you if there's any penalties, and they're going to tell you there's no penalty in stroke play, but there is in match play. But it should be done correct the way we just suggested. Now, when the player takes relief or is going to play a provisional ball from anywhere else except the teeing area, taking relief from a different place where it lies, playing a provisional ball. It's going to tell you match play and stroke play. Player becomes aware that he or she is required to take stroke and distance. There's a situation. Or the player has a choice to play the ball as it lies or to take relief. How do we proceed? The player's order of play is based on the spot where his or her previous stroke was made. So here we got a player. It's A's turn to play, as we see, and he hits it out of bounds. And so he's going to play again because he's got to play stroke and distance. Got to take stroke and distance. We know that. When a player has a choice to play a ball as it lies or take relief, once again, player's order of play is based on the spot where the original ball lies. So here we have a situation about, this may refer back to that question. There's A's ball. There's a number of things A can do. All right. It's B's turn to play regardless of where A chooses to play his or her next stroke. Okay. B's farther. In this case, B is farther from the hole. Doesn't matter. A could come back behind where B's ball is. Okay, so A, there you go. On the spot where the original ball lies. This applies even when the player has already decided to take stroke and distance or to take relief to play from a different place than where the original ball lies. Okay, when the player will play a provisional ball from anywhere except the teeing area, the order of play for the player to play the provisional ball right after making the previous stroke and before anyone else plays the ball. When starting play from, except when you start play from a hole in the teeing area. You don't just whip that right down, you wait. If anyone else has to play a provisional ball, could be two hit. And they're in the same order. But it says when the player waits before deciding to play a provisional ball, in which case the player's order of play, once he or she has decided to play a provisional ball, is based on the spot where the previous stroke was made. So in that last slide, about 3 or 4 slides back, if that player decides to take stroke and distance, it'll be his turn to play because he was behind where B was. Okay, so here's a player. Could be unplayable or who knows. When the player waits before deciding to play, in which case it's the player's order of play once he or she has decided to play a provisional ball, is based on the spot where the previous stroke was made. Now, let's go over this one again. When player A and then player B play their balls from the teeing area into a pond marked as a red penalty area, A's ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area 20 yards nearer the hole than where B's ball crossed. A's ball sank in the middle of the pond about 30 yards from the hole. That's the position of the ball. B's ball sank near the green side edge about 10 yards from the hole. Neither ball in the pond is found or retrieved. Which player turn is it to play next? A, if it is A's turn to play, since his ball in the pond is farther from the hole than B's is. B, it's B's turn to play, since his ball entered the penalty area farther from the hole than A's. C, the order of play is determined by where the two players make their next strokes after taking relief from the penalty area. And D, since A played first on his previous stroke, it's his turn to play. Now, what do we think? Think about it. That's it, because B's ball is, the location of B's ball is known and farther. And no matter where he decides to go in this situation, A, it's his turn to play because his ball is farther from the hole than B's. Whether he takes stroke and distance, goes back to the tee, or whatever happens to be. Seems unusual, but such it is. Any questions?
None yet.
Okay. Don't be afraid. Now, completing player, though. The player has completed a hole in match play when the player holes out, obviously. or gets a concession, or a concession of the hole, not just the stroke. Or when the player's got a hold of it, the other player can't, maybe he's making an X or can't possibly make anything lower. Or if the player or the opponent gets, when you get the general penalty, you lose the hole immediately. No matter what happens after that, you've lost the hole in match play. Now in stroke play, player holds out. Okay. Now this is interesting. When a player has holed out, the play of that hole is completed. Player gets no penalty for playing another ball. What do you mean by that? Well, if you can't find your ball, you've hit a shot, you can't find it, you put another ball in play, or you concede the hole. The concession is not valid because you're already holed out with the other ball. After searching for it for 3 minutes, you can't find it and you continue to play with a provisional, or believing it's the original ball, player plays a wrong ball. If the player did not know the hole was completed and attempts to complete play of the hole with another ball, the player's further play is not considered practice. Okay, because you didn't know. You hold out, the hole's over. Doesn't matter what you do after that. Okay. Now, interesting to look at these rules because on a test or on the exam, they're going to ask you a question. Let's say you're in a 4-ball and somebody, one of your player A practices. He's holed out. Player B still has a putt to go. When has the side completed play of the hole? It's important. A little confusing, but it's important. So read these rules here. 21. I'll leave it up here where you can write them. 21.1b, 21.2b, 21.3b, and 23.3c. Okay. Any question on completing play of the hole?
No, sir.
Okay. And that's our rule 6. All right, now you have to tell me what do I escape?
Yeah, that'd be the easiest way.
All right, yeah, do an easy way for me. And then I'm gonna go back to okay. Here we go. And I'm gonna do rule 7. Rule 7, okay, here it is. And I'll open that up. And there's rule 7. It hasn't changed much. Alice, is this this rule you sent this to me? This rule doesn't have too much of a change in the new program, does it?
No, it does not.
Okay.
And while Clarky's switching over, just for the other folks on the call, these are the full presentations that the USGA puts together to use at the national workshops. And as you can all see, it's a lot of clicks to get through these rules, and but just amazing materials that David Stabler and his team have put together at the USGA, and very helpful for teaching. They are working on a version that they can give out and share with people like us with club pros that we can use with our members and guests if we want to do rules workshops. But at this time, these are proprietary materials, and we're fortunate to have access to them because we serve on the national committee. But hopefully they'll have something for all of us to use with our members and guests going forward.
All right. Thank you, Alice. David Stabler, quite a mind. He writes. I'm correct in saying that he himself writes the tests, Alice, the exams.
You know, I think they put the exams together as a team, but David is directly responsible. He's a whiz at PowerPoints, so he has put all these PowerPoints together. He's constantly tweaking his own presentations, and even I taught with him last week in Phoenix, and he was already making notes for how things can be worded a little bit better. Going forward, they're going to do a revision to the rules, and I think it's 2023. Is that right? Anyway, he's quite the rules mind, to say the least. But he's not solely responsible for the exam. He's got cohorts like Craig Winter and some of those other guys that are diabolical that help with the putting that exam together.
We were the last time I took the exam, we were going over it afterwards. You know, you come into the room after you've turned your score, everybody's turned their tests in, and they go over the exam, and you know, you've got what you have a sheet there where you know the questions, so you can pretty much figure if you passed or failed. And there was a brutal question there, I thought, about I forget what it was about now, but it was it's about giving advice. And David Stabler was in the back of the room and sitting there with his new beard. He was looking very Mephistophelian in the back there, and we're going over it. And this rule came, and a lot of people groaned when the answer came down, including myself. And the girl who was conducting the review said, "Do we think, David? Do you think that was a hard question?" And I, at the top of my lungs, I said, "Well, if he don't, I do." And that way it was tough. Okay. We'll talk now. Rule 7, ball search, finding, identify, how to fairly search for your ball. Going to know how to do that now. It's different. It's a kinder, gentler USGA. You don't get penalized for things you used to get penalized for. How do you identify it? Lifting it to identify it. That used to take a procedure. That's changed. And if you accidentally move it and trying to find or identify it. Okay, this tells you what you're allowed to do. You got to be able to fairly search for the thing, and then when you're not sure you found it, that your ball. Okay, what do you do when you're looking for to identify? Now here's a question: a player accidentally moves his ball while searching for it in long grass in a penalty area. See, they load these questions up with information. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it isn't. But he's looking for his ball, long grass, in a penalty area. He did not know the ball's original location. If the player wants to play from the penalty area, the correct ruling is the player gets a no penalty and must estimate the ball's location and replace it on that spot. No penalty and must drop the ball as near as possible to where it is estimated to have been. So first they're saying to replace it. Second thing, same thing, but you're dropping it. 1 penalty stroke and must estimate the ball's location and replace it. And 1 penalty stroke and must drop the ball as near as possible. So they're similar. So keep those in mind and we'll figure it out. Now, allows a player that you can take reasonable actions to fairly search. Certain things you can't do. You got to be careful. If you act excessively and you cause improvement to the conditions. Go into that high grass and start hacking away at it, removing it, cutting it down, it could be a problem. Now, you don't get a penalty if it's accidentally moved in trying to find or identify it. But you got to replace it on its original spot. Okay, here we are in fescue. And it looks like that young lady there, she looks like she's getting a headache. I think it's her ball they're looking for. So you're responsible for finding it after each stroke, but you can have help to look for it. So you can, once again, you get this word fairly search, taking reasonable actions. And what she's doing there is reasonable. You can move or bend grass, bushes, tree branches, and other growing or attached natural objects. Now, tree branches, you say you can move them. Well, yeah, you can. You better not break one off, but you can move one. You can pull it a little bit out of the way gently. Once again, proceed lightly and gingerly. And also, you can break them, but only if such breaking is a result of other reasonable actions taken to find and identify the ball. Now, if it improves the conditions affecting the stroke, there's no penalty. If it results from a fair search, have a little leeway here in areas of judgment as officials. But if it isn't, if the actions were not needed, then the player is going to get the general penalty for breach of 8. Now here it tells you, it makes it pretty clear. These are unlikely to be part of a fair search. So these are things you shouldn't do. Let's say you're taking an action to flatten the grass beyond what's reasonably necessary to walk through it. Purposely removing any growing thing. Maybe you're pulling plants out or something. Or breaking a tree branch to allow easier access to the ball when it could have been reached without doing so. Okay. Now you may remove loose impediments. There's your bus. This is different than it used to be. As allowed. And you can move movable obstructions as allowed under 15. Now here we have a common situation. Sand affecting the lie of a player's ball. It's moved while trying to find and identify it. You know, we know we can go in, we know the ball's in, we're looking for the ball, we can probe in the sand to find the ball, and if the ball moves, there would be no penalty and you would recreate the original lie. Now, that's new. That did not used to be the case everywhere. Now we're in areas of sand, not just in a bunker you could do that, but other areas of sand, a while back you couldn't do that. You would have to say, if my ball is in this area of sand, I know it's in here, I'm going to probe for it, and if I find it, I'm going to declare it unplayable. And then but if you didn't say that, you would get your unplayable stroke penalty and one for moving your ball in play, and they cleaned that up nicely. I hate to go back and mention things in the past because we want to try to forget them, but I'm so grateful for the USJ for clearing that up. So now you're going to recreate the original lie in the sand. And you leave a small part of the ball visible if the ball is completely covered by sand. Just a little bit where you can try to get at it. And if you don't do this, you don't recreate this, you're going to get the general penalty when you play. Now this is interesting. This player she's played 2 balls, and they're in the generally the same area. I shouldn't say general. They're in the same. They're in the same relative area. It depends on how close the balls are as to whether you get 2 3-minute searches. Now, you get 3 minutes now, not 5. And obviously if the balls are on opposite sides of the fairways and you're looking for them, you've got the 2 3 minutes. But if they're in the same relative area here, you're only going to get 3 minutes to look for both of them. Okay. So I might have read that in the past. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Player's ball at rest. This is new and different and better. Once again, better. Player ball may be identified by any of these ways. Take note of this. If the player or anyone else seeing a ball come to rest, you see it there, in circumstances where it is known to be the player's ball. By seeing the player's identifying mark on the ball, by finding a ball with the same brand, model number, and condition as the player's ball in an area where the player's ball is expected to be. You're playing a Titleist 5 and it's brand new, and now you find another Titleist 5 that obviously not brand new. Well, that's not your ball. It does not apply if an identical ball in the same area And there's no way to know which one of these is the player's ball. Now, if the player's provisional ball can't be, this is a very interesting one. You'll see this on an exam, I think. If you cannot distinguish your provisional from your original, what do? The player is able then to choose one of the two balls, and that will be considered to be his provisional ball. Okay, now, just a little extra information. Now, if it can't be identified as it lies, the player may lift the ball to identify it, including by rotating it. However, the spot of the ball must be marked. If you just walk up there and rotate that ball, you're going to get a one-stroke penalty. And the ball must not be cleaned more than needed to identify it. So you would mark that ball, and you would pick it up gingerly hopefully with 2 fingers, and hope that you don't knock enough mud off it to be penalized. If you can't identify it, you just see the 2-finger method. Can't clean it more than needed to identify it. Okay, the ball must be replaced on its original spot. Now, if you lift the ball when there's no reason to lift it, well, what happens? You've moved your ball in play, you get a penalty stroke, got to put it back. You have to replace it. Well, obviously, except on the putting green when you're allowed to do it, to mark it, lift it, and clean it. Now, if you fail to mark the spot before you lift it, you get 1 penalty stroke. Okay? This goes on. If you clean it when you're not allowed to, let's see, okay, you get 1 penalty stroke. However, if you do those things, you're only going to get a maximum of 1 penalty stroke. You're not going to get 2. Now, there used to be a situation, you had a procedure. You had to allow your fellow competitor or your opponent the opportunity to witness that lifting of the ball, and that's been taken away. Now you can do it yourself. Okay. And the multiple rule breaches. And just what I said, the marking, lifting, cleaning, dropping, replacing, where a penalty is 1 stroke, such as lifting the ball without marking a spot and cleaning it. But if you play if you don't get it back into the right place, if you don't replace it for some reason and you play it, you're going to get the total of 2. This is where you lifted it, you cleaned it, but without marking. You did all those things, but not allowed. You're going to get 2 penalty strokes, the general penalty, not 3. Okay. Now, there's no and this is a new thing. There's no penalty if the player's ball is accidentally moved by the player, opponent, or anyone else while trying to find or identify it. And this, I think, this is one of the most wonderful. Because what have you gained if you somehow or other kick your ball and then you put it back into exactly the same place? You have gained nothing. And that's why this was a very good change. Very high on the USGA. Now, if this happens, if you do this, you must replace it. That means you got to put the same ball back on its original spot, which if you don't know it, can you estimate it? You kicked it, you're not quite sure. Now, in doing so, if the ball was on, under, or against any immovable obstruction, integral object, boundary object, or growing or attached natural object. That's what tells you what the lie of the ball is. Then the ball must be replaced on its original spot, under or against those odds. So you have to put it back in the proper lie, and that's your lie. That tells you what the lie is. Those are part of the lie. You move all those things. Now, once again, if the ball is covered by sand, we had the situation in a bunker, which always pertained, but now we have the situation here in an area of sand. Same thing. The original ball must be recreated, and the ball must be replaced in that lie. But the player may leave a small part so he can see the ball. Now here we got a ball with a bunch of leaves. What do we do here? If you deliberately move things where it'll say removal of a loose impediment, where a ball must be replaced. If you do it deliberately, you're going to be penalized. Okay. Here's our question. A player accidentally moves his ball while searching for it in long grass in the penalty area. He did not know the ball's original location. If the player wants to play from the penalty area, he wants to go back there, doesn't want to come out with a stroke penalty, he wants to put the ball. The correct ruling is the player gets no penalty and must estimate the ball's location and replace it on that spot. No penalty and must drop the ball as near as possible to where it is. So once again, you got that like that last one. You replace or drop, pretty much the same. One penalty stroke and must estimate, or one penalty stroke and must drop the ball. So let's see. What do you think? The answer is no penalty, because it was done during a search. Even the fact that it's in a penalty area, because remember, in a penalty area, you can do anything now that you can do in the general area. Okay? So no penalty. He just goes back there, puts it back. Now, once he puts it back, he can look at the thing and say, well, I don't like this. I'm going to take the one-stroke penalty and have my Rule 17 options. Or he can immediately proceed. Ball's in the penalty area. We know under the penalty area rule, Rule 17. Any question on Rule 7?
There haven't been any submitted just yet.
Well, I'd like to hope that the no questions are due to the succinctness with which I proffered the information. At any rate, I'll console myself to think that. All right. And it was a pleasure doing this today.
Clarky, thank you. Very well done. I think Rule 7, one of the best changes they made in the 2019 revision, we want the player to find the ball. We want the player whose ball is involved to be able to go out there and find it when they're searching. And before, that player had to search very carefully for fear of moving the ball. But now, the way the rules read, as long as you're searching fairly, you can be, brushing through the grass with a club, as we saw the one player in the picture. If you're fairly searching for it and you accidentally move it, either you or your caddy, there's no problem, and you're just going to replace it on that spot. If you don't know the exact spot, you're going to estimate it, and we're going to see that when we get to Rule 9. But great change in the rules to be able to, for the player and his or her caddy to be able to search for the ball and search, very, very actively, not unreasonably. You can't go in there and hack things down. But if you do bend or break stuff in the process of searching for it, and if you move your ball, that's all okay. So great rule change on Rule 7.
And we should point out that that's only during a search. If you're walking down the fairway and your ball is sitting there and you just, out of clumsiness, happen to move it, you're going to get the penalty and you have to replace the ball. Yeah,
good point. We'll see that when we get to Rule 9. And some of this stuff, you guys can already see how kind of redundant some of it seems, but the rules are all interconnected. So when there's a reference to Rule 8, I'm going to be covering that next week, which is about playing the course as you find it and not improving the conditions around your ball and that sort of thing. The rules kind of interconnect, and that's why having the app that Clarky mentioned if I'm on my iPad or my phone and I see this reference to rule, 8.1, whatever, I can click that and I can go and quickly read that and see how that relates to the rule that I'm currently reading. So having the app is very helpful. Otherwise, these rule numbers, they don't mean much. I'm learning some of them. I don't know all of them. I know the main numbers, but not all these little subsections, and nor do I feel that I need to, as long as I know the information. But when you're trying to learn it and study it, to have that context and be able to, click it and go over and see, oh, okay, that's what Rule 14.2D says. That's helpful in learning the rules.
Absolutely.
Next week, I'm going to be going over, next Monday, I'm going to talk about Rules 8, 9, and 11. And Rule 8 is all about playing the course as you find it and what we can't do and can do around our ball to improve things, whether we'll see what those conditions affecting the stroke are. And it's pretty restricted, and it'll be familiar. The terminology, Clark, I don't know about you, but the terminology and the phrasing and the wording that is used in the new code is a little different, and it seems a little awkward at times. And that's because they had to go to a version of English. They went to the international version so that these rules could be translated into all different languages. So they're using international English. I think it's the same version used by the United Nations. And sometimes the phrasing is kind of awkward, and some of the terminology is kind of different. And we're hoping that we can put that into Americanese for all of you. And then Rule 9 is, again, playing the ball as it lies. And if the ball does get moved, what happens? Is there a penalty or not? We'll go through that. And then I'm also going to try to fit in Rule 11 next week, which when a ball in motion is accidentally stopped or deflected, or deliberately stopped or deflected. So those three rules kind of go together. And then at the end of next week, I probably will try to do a little Cliff Note version on status of the ball, which I think can be done fairly succinctly. If we do the PowerPoint, we will definitely put you all to sleep, but status of the ball is important, and I think maybe we'll have time to fit that in next week. So that's my hope.
Well, there was one thing I was going to talk that I forgot to mention about things you can do on the tee to improve that you're allowed to do. It says you can move anything or change anything that's growing inside the teeing area. Now, that does not mean that, say, we have a tree limb that's outside the teeing area. If it grows, or if it's growing over the protruding over the tee, you can't change that. And I'll give you a little. Years ago, many years ago, when I was an assistant, I was playing Frankfurt Tarsdale in an assistants tournament, and the tees are small, and I'm left-handed, and unfortunately, whoever set the tees out that day forgot that there was a left-handed player in the field, and I actually had a tree limb protruding over this little tee that they had there where I couldn't really make a backswing. And I have to say, I don't have much of a backswing anyway, even in those days, but this was really tough, and couldn't do anything about it. So I actually had to play what we used to call an alternate ball. I put a ball down as far away from that tree limb as I could, and I hacked the 7-iron out, and then I tried to make a tee shot from there, a proper tee shot, and I got a fairly good ruling on it. But amazing how they forgot that one left-handed player in the field.
Yeah, the other thing about Rule 6, the teeing area rule, everybody thinks the putting green, we have a lot of permissions on the putting green, but I think the teeing area is the most permissive area on the golf course. There are things we can do on the teeing area that you can't even do on the putting green, like removing the frost or the dew. And as you mentioned, Clark, anything on the ground in the teeing area, you can alter it. And when we get to Rule 8, you're going to see that you can't do that anywhere else. So the teeing area has a lot of permissions that go with it. I do like the change, as you said, about the player, swings and misses, or the ball just barely falls off. We know that, like with a lot of our beginners, their immediate reaction is to grab the ball and re-tee it. Well, that used to be a no-no, but now that's fine. As long as your ball is in that teeing area, even if it's in play or you had to come back under stroke and distance, you have all the same permissions that you had when you first teed off. And I think that's been a really good change.
Yep, it's kinder and gentler.
Yep, more player friendly.
Well,
Any other questions from anybody? The other thing I was going to mention is for those of you that are really rules nerds and are going down the rabbit hole, if you're going through the rules and you have questions, when we get to our final session, which I think is Thursday, March 3rd, Clarky and I are going to kind of co-host that, and we're going to talk about Rule 23 4-ball, which is one of the probably most popular formats that we play at our courses. And we're also going to talk about committee procedures and how to resolve rules disputes, because as the golf pro at your course, if you're the committee, you're going to have those questions. But we should also have time on that last session to answer any questions. We are selectively going through these rules in the 6 sessions that we have, and we're not touching on everything by any means. So if you do have questions as you go through the rules on your own, or maybe you've had a rule situation for yourself as a player, or at your facility, we'll have some time on that last session to try to answer those questions and to get into some of those hypotheticals if we need to. We should have time for that on session 6.
Good. Look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Everybody, have a happy Valentine's Day. Matt, thank you for your help and support on the IT end of it. Like I said, our next session is next Monday, and I'll be teaching that on rules 8, 9, and 11.
Thank you very much, Clark and Alice. We'll see everybody soon.
Take care.